What if we told you that Antarctica used to be a dense forest sometime in the past, about 100 million years ago, inhabited by dinosaurs? Presently, the Antarctic ecosystem is adapted to the long months of winter darkness that occurs at the poles, and the continent hasn't been the most welcoming to life forms, unlike other continents, which is a good thing. This means that Antarctica might have clues to the ancient past buried deep inside the ice caps. If global warming continues, could these ancient forests be revived? What if the glacier meltdown results in the revival of some ancient virus? What consequences will it have on our planet? Well, that's exactly what we discuss in this video today, so make sure to stick around till the end to know a lot more about the Antarctic's pressing issues. You have to give credit to ancient Greece for coming up with the idea of Antarctica because they already knew about the Arctic, which is named after Arctos, the bear from the constellation of the Great Bear. Greek scholars were the first to suggest that a sizable southern continent could exist opposite to the Arctic, but in order to have a balance in the world, the ancient Greeks believed that there should be something similar to the Arctic in the South Pole, which they called Antarcticos, or opposite the bear. The year 1820 was when the race to find the elusive southern continent was progressing at a rapid pace. The story of Antarctica is the story of human endeavor, determination, and the will to do something when everybody else failed. Fast forwarding to the 15th century of European exploration of the globe, this imaginary land was widely printed in maps and labeled Terra Australis Incognita, unknown southern land. For a long time, Antarctica was dismissed as a reality, even though it fueled the imagination of so many explorers. Things changed in 1773, when James Cook and his crew crossed the Antarctic Circle for the first time. He discovered isolated islands, but found no continent. Little did he know that he was just 128 kilometers from the Antarctic coast. Cook famously declared, "I can be bold to say that no man will ever venture farther than I have done, and that the lands which may lie to the south will never be explored." But just 48 years later, he was proved wrong. In January 1820, a Russian expedition led by Bellingshausen crossed the Antarctic Circle for the second time in history. The following day, he became the first explorer to ever set eyes on a very strange, unknown continent. Then, in 1821, just a year later, explorer and sealer John Davis became the very first person to set foot on Antarctica, and that's when the seventh continent was no longer a myth, but a reality. This then grabbed the attention of so many explorers. We had British explorer Robert Falcon Scott, who sailed from England in 1901 and attempted to reach the South Pole in 1902, but the continent's harsh conditions proved it impossible to beat, and the team had to retreat. Then we had the Anglo-Irishman, Ernest Henry Shackleton, who had been a part of Scott's expedition and barely survived. He, however, was determined to try again. That's when, in 1908, he pioneered the route up to the polar plateau and came within 180 kilometers of the pole before being forced to return. In the years to come, several countries claimed rights for Antarctica, and negotiations between Britain, New Zealand, France, Australia, Norway, Argentina, Chile, and the USA began in 1948. Finally, to prevent conflict in the region, 12 countries signed the Antarctic Treaty in 1959. The treaty positioned Antarctica as a scientific hub, which then established the freedom of scientific investigation and also banned all military activity on the continent. The treaty was the first arms control agreement to be set during the Cold War, because of which Antarctica still to this day remains as a site for scientific research and a beacon for travelers who seek adventure. For most people, Antarctica might be just another cold, distant, uninviting, dangerous place with very little to offer. But the continent is a lot more than that. Antarctica is a unique continent, as it is an isolated landmass with no permanent human settlements, surrounded by wide, cold, and stormy oceans. But don't let that fool you into believing that Antarctica is totally useless. In fact, the whole of mankind benefits from this isolated continent and its ecosystems. It is a global resource that must be managed for the benefit of all. It is the last and largest unspoiled wilderness area on Earth. It is a reminder of what our planet looked like before the influence of human beings. The unspoiled beauty has also inspired people ever since it was first discovered. The fact that Antarctica belongs to no one gives the continent a unique position, because there were no native inhabitants on the continent, all because of the environmental conditions which made life difficult. Antarctica's influence on the entire world, combined with the fact that this continent was not inhabited by humans, means that it can act as a laboratory for the rest of the world, where changes can be measured in isolation. It is crucial to help us understand the effect of global warming, including the ice cores going back hundreds of thousands of years. But this continent is changing faster than we can imagine, all thanks to global warming. Antarctica has already experienced a temperature increase of about 3 degrees in the Antarctic Peninsula. It might not seem significant, but it is 5 times the mean rate of global warming, as reported by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. In the last 50 years, the western coast of the Antarctic Peninsula has been one of the most rapidly warming parts of the entire world. This warming is not only restricted to land, but also the Southern Ocean. Upper ocean temperatures to the west of the Antarctic Peninsula have increased over 1 degree Celsius ever since 1955. Researchers have come to a conclusion that the Antarctic circumpolar current is warming more rapidly than the global ocean as a whole. This is why studying the climate change in Antarctica is extremely important, because it helps scientists to predict more accurately the impact of future climate change and provide information to politicians and policymakers to make a change before it's too late. Major changes to the physical and living environment of the continent are taking place as a result of the warming of the Antarctic Peninsula. The penguin colonies have changed due to changes in sea ice conditions. Vegetation started to pop up due to melting of perennial snow and ice covers. Reduced sea ice cover resulted in a long-term decline in the abundance of Antarctic krill in the southwestern Atlantic center of the Southern Ocean. Southwestern Atlantic sector of the Southern Ocean. So many glaciers have melted, and ice shelves that formerly fringed the peninsula have been retreating in recent years, and some of them completely collapsed, all thanks to the effects of global warming. Now, why are these glaciers important? Well, ice acts as a protective cover over the Earth and our oceans. These bright white spots on our planet reflect excess heat back into space there by keeping the temperature cooler. Ever since the early 1900s, many glaciers around the world have been rapidly melting, all because of human activities, which are considered to be the root cause of this phenomenon, especially after the Industrial Revolution. The situation is worse at the poles as a result. Glaciers are rapidly melting, and they are getting back into the sea. Antarctica remains colder than the equator because more heat from the sun is reflected off the ice back into space. Some of these glaciers are several thousand years old, meaning there could be some ancient virus that would be capable of wiping out humans and other life forms. These glaciers can also provide scientific records of how climate has changed over time. Today, about 10% of the land area on Earth is covered with glacial ice, and not so surprisingly, 90% of it is in Antarctica, and the remaining 10% is in the Greenland ice cap. A rapid glacial meltdown in Antarctica would influence ocean currents, as massive amounts of very cold glacial meltwater entering warmer ocean waters will slow down ocean currents, and sea levels will continue to rise. Even if we take a lot of effort to curb emissions, more than a third of the world's remaining glaciers will melt before the year 2100. About 95% of the oldest and thickest sea ice of Antarctica ice will already be gone. The Arctic region could be ice-free as early as 2040. If this happens, the entire globe gets affected, because when sea ice and glaciers melt, warm ocean currents will continue to disrupt weather patterns across the world. Industries that thrive on fishery will be affected, the temperature of water will change, and that would change the behavioral pattern of several aquatic animals. Coastal communities will continue to face billions of dollars in damage due to frequent flooding and intense storms. Wildlife like walruses will also lose their homes. Polar bears are now spending more time on land, which increases the rate of conflict between people and bears. The vast, ice-covered Antarctic continent is already a major component of the Earth's global climate system. The high-contrast reflective properties of white ice-covered areas and surrounding dark sea surface in the region plays a very important role in regulating regional and global climate. The extremely cold and salty waters around Antarctica drive a conveyor belt of oceanic heat around the globe. The Southern Ocean is also extremely effective at absorbing the greenhouse carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, as a result of ocean mixing caused by strong westerly winds around the continent. Political leaders and society as a whole already have access to the best scientific evidence and understanding of the likely scale and impact of global climate change. A great deal of international effort is now the need of the hour to produce better predictions of future changes due to greenhouse gas emissions, because Antarctica needs to be preserved at every cost. It's already a little too late, but it's better late than never, right?